All right, so we continue to reflect on some announcements and decisions made by our government. The South African Union of Students, SAUS, says it is disappointed at the measures announced by the Higher Education Minister, Nzimande, on the COVID-19 protocols. Minister Nzimande said beyond the coronavirus pandemic, the education sector must embrace technology as a method of learning and teaching. He also announced that the suspension of campus-based activities at tertiary institutions will continue at level 4 of the lockdown. However, online classes are expected to continue, so only final year medical students will be returning to campus and will also assist with the battle against the COVID-19. The minister said that in the future, universities must also work together and not competitively by offering their classes online to anyone, even students of other institutions. Let's now take the discussion further. We joined via Skype by SAUS, a member of the National Executive Committee, Bongani Mahlangu. Bongani, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through here on the SABC News channel. So what exactly are you not satisfied with from the minister's announcement?
So basically what the minister announced is a two-tier system. So the two-tier system is a system for historically disadvantaged institutions and a system for historically advantaged institutions. And the minister was only definitive in terms of his statement with regards to what NSFAS recipients would be getting, which is digital devices. But as for other things that he said, he was not definitive. So he was saying we are still working on, we are still looking at this, we are still proposing that. So there was no definition. So the minister then basically to us, he went online or he announced to the public that system, and that system goes against what we've been discussing with the minister, that no student should be left behind, of which we went on to define as no individual student should be left behind and no individual institution should be left behind. And according to even the minister's own statistics, only about 12 institutions have declared that they are ready to move to what the minister now calls flexible remote teaching and learning. And the other institutions within the sector would then have to catch up to those institutions. So now when we speak about an issue of equity in terms of the student experience, there is no equity there. So what the minister has said to us of no student left behind and what the minister has said in public through the press are two different things. So the minister is basically saying that there will be a perpetuation of inequality within the sector, whether we like it or not. And we believe that should not be the case, because what we had done as the union is that many weeks ago, we submitted an 11-page document to the minister stating certain conditions that we agree to if we were to move to remote teaching and learning.
And I think, those conditions, I think part of your submissions was related to the issue around online learning, because you were concerned that should universities go online when it comes to teaching and learning, some students will be disadvantaged. So are you not satisfied that the minister may have responded to that particular point by saying that they will ensure that institutions make available the resources for online learning going forward?
That's why we said that at first the conversation began with e-learning, but then the conversation now, or the terminology being used now, has been broadened to remote teaching and learning, which is e-learning is just one component thereof. But initially we had said, when the conversation was just about e-learning, that as much as we do agree in principle that the only way forward is to move to digital platforms, it has to come with certain conditions that we safeguard and ensure that the inequality gap within the sector does not grow. So we should not make e-learning or digital learning the primary, or it should not be the primary argument or primary conversation. It is actually secondary. What is primary is that there should not be perpetuation of inequality. So therefore, we then came up with measures, as I was saying, that we then proposed to the minister as to ensure that this inequality does not grow, because it is there. And one of those measures was to say, Minister, let us devise a pedagogy that is inclusive of everyone and does not leave other people behind. Within that pedagogy, we said that let us move to the current emphasis of the existing pedagogy, which is teach to the test, to more of a mastery-based pedagogy. If there are to be assessments, let them be formative assessments and not summative assessments. And those assessments should have only two outcomes. The student should either be deemed competent So if a student gets between 50 to 100% in whatever assessment, that student would be competent, and that is what will reflect on their transcript. If a student gets 49% to 0%, that student should be deemed not yet competent. We said that so that a student that resides in a social construct that does not allow for adequate academic participation, that student will not be prejudiced, because the same student would probably be funded by someone who has said you must get 70% in order to unlock or to continue the funding in the next academic year. But now the student is not in an environment that they had signed up for, which is a contact teaching and learning environment, residing in residence. So it's conducive. The environment is conducive. Now the student is at home where they are probably being abused, where even if it's a rich student, but they are probably being abused by parents. If it's a poor student, so many people in one house, but you're expected to perform at a certain level. We even said to the minister, reconfigure the curriculum, because what you are doing now is you are taking a curriculum that was designed for contact learning and you are moving the curriculum as is to online platforms. That curriculum was not designed for that. We said to the minister, speak to your SAQA, which is the South African Qualifications Authority, speak to the Council of Higher Education and other regulators within the sector to ensure that even quality of this, the academic integrity of this qualification is not compromised. Among other measures we put in place to the minister to ensure that as we migrate to digital platforms or to so-called flexible remote platforms, these things do not prejudice any student within the sector. But what we have heard from the minister is it went totally against that. What the minister just said is that the 30% of the student population which are funded by NSFAS will get devices. The 70%, they'll just have to figure out how they migrate. Then there are peripheral groups, which is your international students, student with different abilities, student with mental illnesses, postgraduate student, international student, final year students who have to perform at a certain level as to ensure that they're able to articulate, meaning move to honors, masters, PhD in the next year. Also for their social mobility, so that when their qualifications are not compromised in a way that they cannot find jobs in future. The minister totally disregarded those groups.
All right. Bongani, I'm afraid due to time constraints, we're going to have to leave the discussion at this. But of course, it's a discussion for another day, because we need to know what then happens, seeing that as the union representing the students, you are not happy with the strategies that have been put forward. And of course, we know that these strategies, as announced by the minister, will certainly be implemented. We'll make a day to further the discussion. Thank you so much for coming through. Bongani Mahlangu is an NEC member for the South African Union of Students.